He stared at his phone. 3 words. Sent. And the moment he saw the name at the top of that conversation, his stomach dropped straight through the floor. I love you. Sleep tight, princess. Dream of castles and dragons. It wasn't his daughter's contact. It was hers. The one person in the world he could not afford to lose. Marcus Webb, 12 years in the United States Navy. A man who had survived storms at sea and never once flinched, stood frozen in his own kitchen, completely undone by a text message. Drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. You don't want to miss what happens next. Marcus Webb had a rule. One rule he never broke no matter what. No matter how late the debrief ran, no matter how much paperwork stacked up on his desk, no matter how many times Master Chief Donaldson needed him for just 5 more minutes, that always stretched into 45. Every night at exactly 8:30, he texted Lily goodnight. It wasn't optional. It wasn't a habit. It was a promise the kind a father makes when he knows he's already broken too many other ones. The kind you make when you've missed 3 Christmases, 2 birthday parties, and the night your 6-year-old got her tonsils out because the ship was already past the point of no return somewhere in the Pacific. Lily Webb was 7 years old, and she was the best thing Marcus had ever done with his life. She had his jaw and her mother's eyes, and an imagination so wild and so full that sometimes Marcus would sit at the edge of her bed after she fell asleep, just watching her breathe, trying to memorize every detail of a face that kept changing too fast, no matter how hard he held on. The divorce had been final for 2 years. Rebecca had moved to Phoenix. She'd remarried 6 months later, a dentist named Craig, who coached youth soccer and took Lily to Disney World and made her pancakes on Saturday mornings in shapes of cartoon characters. Marcus didn't hate Craig. He tried hard not to, but every time Lily came home from a weekend at her mom's and said, "Craig showed me how to," Marcus would go quiet in a way he knew wasn't fair and couldn't seem to stop. He had Lily on weekdays and every other weekend. The arrangement was supposed to make sense on paper. The reality was that on most weekdays, Marcus was on base until 6, sometimes 7, sometimes not at all, and Lily was at the neighbor's house. Mrs. Patterson's a retired schoolteacher with a bad hip and a very patient disposition who charged $40 a day and never once complained, even when Marcus was 45 minutes late, picking Lily up for the 3rd Tuesday in a row. He was doing his best. He told himself that every single day. On the night everything changed, Marcus had gotten home at 7:15. He'd made spaghetti from a box Lily's favorite, which said a lot about how limited her options had been, and they'd eaten together at the kitchen table, while Lily told him about her day in the breathless, unpunctuated way she had of talking, where one sentence became 12 without warning, and Marcus had to concentrate hard just to keep up. And then Tyler said that dragons aren't real, but I told him that's not true, because nobody really knows. And Mrs. Harmon said you can't prove. Something doesn't exist if you've never looked everywhere. And I've never looked everywhere. Have you looked everywhere, Daddy? Not everywhere, Marcus said. I've been at sea a lot. Could have missed some dragons. Lily pointed her fork at him like he'd just said something extremely important. Exactly. He did the dishes while she brushed her teeth. He helped her pick out tomorrow's clothes, even though she changed her mind 3 times. He read 2 chapters of a book about a girl who discovers she can talk to horses. Lily's current obsession, and by the 2nd chapter, her eyes were getting heavy, and her responses to his reading were just soft little mm-hms that meant she was 3/4 of the way to sleep. He kissed her forehead. He turned off the lamp. He stood in the doorway for a second longer than he needed to, just looking at her, this small, impossible person, who needed him more than anything in the world had ever needed him, including the United States government. Then he pulled out his phone. He meant to open Lily's contact. He did this every night. She was listed under My Princess, with a little crown emoji he'd never tell anyone about. He would type out the same message he always sent, some version of the same sweet, simple thing, and he would send it so it would be the first thing she saw in the morning. even though she was asleep 15 feet away and could have just walked down the hall. It was the ritual. It was the point. The problem was that Marcus had been staring at his phone for the last 40 minutes before putting Lily to bed, trading a dozen messages back and forth with Dana Holloway about a situation at work, a junior sailor under Marcus's watch who was in real trouble, family stuff, the kind of mess that needed a clear head and careful advice, and Dana's name was still glowing at the top of his recent contacts list. He didn't look. That was the truth of it. He was tired. His eyes were burning from staring at reports all day. He tapped the first name at the top of the list, pulled up the keyboard, and typed from muscle memory. I love you. Sleep tight, princess. Dream of castles and dragons. He hit send. He set his phone face down on the counter. He went to get a glass of water. He stood at the kitchen sink, drinking slowly, staring out at the backyard that he kept meaning to mow, and for about 30 seconds Marcus Webb was just a quiet man in a quiet house at the end of a long day, and everything was fine. Then his phone buzzed. He almost didn't pick it up. Could have been Base. Could have been Mrs. Patterson reminding him about something. Could have been the automated reminder from the dentist that Lily had an appointment in 2 weeks. He picked it up, and the world tilted sideways. The name at the top of his screen wasn't My Princess. It was Dana. And beneath it his own message sitting there in the blue bubble like an unexploded bomb. I love you. Sleep tight, princess. Dream of castles and dragons. Marcus read it 3 times. His brain kept trying to find an interpretation where this was okay, where maybe there was a context in which a 38-year-old Navy petty officer could send, I love you, sleep tight, princess, to his best friend and have it mean something completely ordinary. His brain searched hard. It found nothing. No, he said out loud to his empty kitchen. No, no, no. He picked the phone up, tried to unsend it, couldn't, stared at it for a full 8 seconds, which felt like 8 minutes, thought about throwing the phone into the backyard. Decided that would not actually help. Then Dana replied. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Wrong number, I assume. 4 words. Flat. Precise. The verbal equivalent of a closed door. Marcus stared at those 4 words and felt something seize up in his chest. Dana Holloway was not the kind of person who used flat, precise sentences. She was the person who texted him voice memos because she typed too fast and made too many typos and found the whole process inefficient. She was the person who sent him 11-part texts about a movie she'd watched and ended every 4th one with, "Wait, I forgot to say," before continuing. She was warm. She was loud. She was the person who called him out on his nonsense and also brought him soup when he had the flu and had never once in 6 years of friendship let a single thing go awkward between them. Wrong number, I assume. That wasn't Dana's voice. That was Dana putting on armor. Marcus typed fast. That was meant for Lily. I'm so sorry. I'm an idiot. He watched the dots. Ha. Okay. Tell her I said sweet dreams. And then nothing. No follow-up, no voice memo, no, wait, I forgot to say. Just silence. Marcus did not sleep well that night. He lay on his back in the dark and ran the whole thing through his head on a loop. It wasn't that complicated. It was an accident. A stupid, embarrassing, completely explainable accident. People sent texts to the wrong person all the time. It meant nothing. Dana knew it meant nothing. She'd said it herself, wrong number, I assume, and moved on. Except Dana didn't say, I assume, unless she wasn't sure. He hadn't noticed that the first time. He noticed it now, at 1 in the morning, when there was nothing else to do but notice things. She didn't say, oh, wrong number, no worries. She said, wrong number, I assume. Like she was leaving room. Like she'd asked a question sideways and was waiting to see if he'd answer it. Marcus rolled over, stared at the wall, decided he was overthinking it because he was sleep-deprived and anxious and he needed to stop. He was definitely overthinking it. The next morning, Lily ate cereal and talked at length about whether dragons would prefer mountains or beaches as their primary habitat, and Marcus poured coffee into a mug and nodded at everything she said and checked his phone 4 times before they left the house. Nothing from Dana. He dropped Lily at school. He drove to base. He got through the morning muster training schedule review, a meeting that ran long, and he did not text Dana because he'd already apologized, and making it into a bigger deal than it was would only make it a bigger deal than it was. At 2:17 in the afternoon, Dana texted him, "Hey, you okay?" Marcus stared at his phone for longer than was reasonable. "Yeah, just embarrassed," he wrote back. "Forget it ever happened." "I'm not asking about last night. I'm asking, are you okay? In general. Because you sounded tired." He set his phone down, picked it up again. "I sounded tired in a text message. You always put 3 dots after sleep tight when you send it to Lily. Last night you didn't, so yeah, tired." Marcus had absolutely no response to that. He read it twice. He hadn't known she knew that. He hadn't known he knew that. "I'm fine," he typed. Marcus. Just his name. That was all. 1 word. But the way Dana Holloway could fit an entire argument into just his name was something he'd never been able to explain to anyone. He called her. She answered on the second ring. "Hey. Hey." He was already walking toward the parking lot, hand pressed against the back of his neck. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't want you to say anything in particular. I just—" She stopped. There was a small sound like she was setting something down. "I've been your best friend for 6 years, Marcus. I know when you're running on fumes." "I'm always running on fumes. That's just what this looks like." "Is Lily okay?" "Lily's great. Lily is the one thing that is completely fully okay." "And you?" He leaned against the side of his truck, closed his eyes. There was a specific kind of tired that had nothing to do with sleep, the kind that settled in your bones and made everything feel like you were moving through water. He'd had that kind of tired for about 4 months now, maybe longer, and he'd been managing it by not thinking about it. "I burned the grilled cheese last Tuesday," he said. "I forgot to sign her permission slip for the field trip and she didn't say anything, just didn't go, and I only found out because Mrs. Patterson mentioned it 2 days later. And last week I missed a parent-teacher conference that I wrote on my hand, Dana. I wrote it on my actual hand, like a person who doesn't have a phone or a calendar." There was a beat of quiet on the other end. "Why didn't you tell me any of that?" "Because I'm fine." "You just listed 4 reasons why you're not fine." "I'm handling it." Marcus. Again, just his name, but softer this time. "You're allowed to not be handling it sometimes. That's a real option that exists." He didn't say anything. There wasn't a response that didn't make him sound either defensive or pathetic, and he was trying to avoid both. "Can I come over tonight?" Dana asked. "I'll bring food. Real food, not whatever you make when you're tired." "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't have to. Can I—" He looked up at the sky. Blue and flat and wide, the kind of February sky that couldn't quite decide if it wanted to be cold or not. "Yeah," he said after a moment. "Yeah, okay." Dana arrived at 6:45 with Thai food and no fanfare. She walked in the way she always did. She'd had a key for 2 years left over from when he'd had surgery on his shoulder and needed someone to check on Lily, and Lily launched herself off the couch the second she heard the door and wrapped both arms around Dana's waist. "Dana, did you bring spring rolls?" "Would I ever come here without spring rolls?" "No." Lily said this with complete certainty, like it was a law of physics. "Daddy burned the grilled cheese." Dana looked at Marcus over the top of Lily's head. He held up one hand. "In my defense—" "There is no defense for burned grilled cheese," Dana said, setting the food on the counter. "That's a binary skill. It's on or it's off." "It was a high-pressure day. A grilled cheese." Lily found this extremely funny. She sat on the kitchen counter while they unpacked the containers, pad thai green curry spring rolls, the soup Marcus hadn't asked for, but Dana apparently knew he needed, and she narrated the entire event with the enthusiasm of a sports commentator. They ate at the kitchen table. Dana asked Lily about her day and got the full dragon habitat theory, which she engaged with completely seriously, contributing her own research about cave environments and the advantages of underground thermal vents. Lily looked at her like she was the smartest person alive. Marcus watched Dana watching Lily and felt something go quiet inside him that had been loud for a while. He couldn't name it exactly. Didn't try. After dinner, Dana helped Lily with the last few pages of her reading homework while Marcus cleaned up. He could hear them at the table, Dana's voice low and patient, Lily's getting excited when she got a word right, and he stood at the sink with the water running, not really washing anything, just standing there. At 8:15, Marcus put Lily to bed. At 8:30, Marcus stood in the kitchen doorway and found Dana sitting on the couch, shoes off, legs folded under her, scrolling her phone. It was the most ordinary thing in the world. She'd been in this house 100 times. She knew where the mugs were, and what drawer he kept the scissors in, and which light switch controlled the living room lamp and not the overhead. But something about tonight felt different in a way Marcus couldn't quite put his finger on, and he was not going to examine that feeling because it was the kind of feeling that led to stupid places. "She's out," he said. She was almost gone at the table. Dana didn't look up from her phone. She was doing that thing where she's still technically answering questions, but the words are getting softer. She does that. He sat in the chair across from the couch, not next to her, across from her, because that was the thing a reasonable person did. "Thanks for coming." "You don't have to thank me." "I know. I'm thanking you anyway." Dana put her phone down. She looked at him with the particular expression she reserved for moments when she was about to say something he wasn't going to love. He knew that expression. He'd cataloged it over 6 years. "You know you don't have to do all of this alone." "I'm not alone. I've got Mrs. Patterson. I've got you." Mrs. Patterson charges $40 a day, and she's 67 years old with a bad hip. And She stopped, took a breath. "I'm here, Marcus. I'm actually genuinely here. And I feel like sometimes you forget that. Like you think asking for help means you're failing at something. Doesn't it?" "No." She said it immediately, no hesitation. "It really doesn't." Marcus looked at her. Dana Holloway, who had talked him through the worst of the divorce, and never once said "I told you so," even when she'd had every right to. Who had come to every one of Lily's birthday parties and remembered that Lily's favorite color had changed from pink to purple, and brought her a purple backpack last September without making it a thing. Who texted him voice memos about movies she'd watched and sent him 11-part texts and always ended with, "Wait, I forgot to say." Wrong number, I assume. She hadn't sounded like herself last night, just for those 4 words. And then she'd pivoted back and she'd been exactly herself today, and Marcus didn't know what to do with that. He almost said something. He could feel the words somewhere at the back of his throat, not fully formed, not even close but present. Something about last night. Something about the way she'd said, "I assume," like she wasn't sure. Something about the fact that he'd been looking at her across this room for 6 years, and somewhere along the way, without permission, things had shifted. He almost said it. "You should eat more," Dana said, pulling her legs off the couch and reaching forward to push the leftover container of green curry in his direction. "You've got a look." "What look?" "The look where you're thinking too loud and haven't eaten enough." She smiled just briefly, and it was so completely her, warm and direct, and a little bit exasperated in the way she was only exasperated with people she actually cared about, that Marcus felt the almost words dissolve back into his chest, unspoken. "Eat," she said. "I'm not leaving until you eat." So he ate, and Dana stayed another hour, and they talked about the sailor Marcus was worried about, and she helped him think through a plan. And at 9:45, she put her shoes back on and picked up her keys and said goodnight the way she always did, easy and warm, no ceremony. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, she said, and her voice was a little different, slightly careful, slightly deliberate. The way people sound when they've decided to say a thing they've been turning over for a while. If you ever text me again by accident at 8:30 at night, I'm not going to mind. She was out the door before he could answer. Marcus stood in the entryway of his house for a long moment, her words still hanging in the air. I'm not going to mind. He thought about wrong number, I assume. He thought about 3 dots after sleep tight and the fact that she'd noticed. He thought about the way she'd looked at Lily tonight, and the way Lily had looked back at her, and the way nothing about this evening had felt ordinary at all, even though all of it looked ordinary from the outside. He stood there until the sound of her car faded down the street. Then he went to the kitchen, opened his phone, and looked at Lily's contact. My princess, and typed out the message. Slowly this time. Careful. I love you. Sleep tight, princess. Dream of castles and dragons. 3 dots after sleep tight exactly where they always were. He sent it. Then he stood in the kitchen for another long moment, his phone still in his hand, thinking about a door and what it meant when someone left it open just a little on their way out. Marcus didn't sleep again that night either. He made it to bed by 10:30, which was early for him, and he lay there in the dark with his hands behind his head and his eyes on the ceiling, doing the thing he'd been doing more and more lately, running calculations in his head about things that couldn't be calculated. How many days since he'd felt like he was actually on top of everything versus just managing not to fall behind? How many times Lily had looked at him with that particular kind of patience that 7-year-olds shouldn't have to have? How many moments he'd missed in the last 2 years that he could not go back and reclaim? And now Dana's voice looping in his head on a quiet repeat. If you ever text me again by accident at 8:30 at night, I'm not going to mind. He turned it over. He examined it from every angle. He tried to decide if it meant what a part of him, the part he usually kept very quiet, thought it meant, or if it was just Dana being Dana, warm and easy and generous, the way she was with everyone she actually let close. The problem was Marcus had known Dana for 6 years, and in 6 years he had never once heard her say something she didn't mean. Dana Holloway did not deal in pleasantries. She was the only person he knew who responded to, "How are you?" with an actual considered answer instead of "fine." She paid attention to 3-dot pauses in text messages. She kept track of things, the kind of things that required you to care enough to notice in the first place. He thought about wrong number, I assume. That little word. Assume. And then he made himself stop thinking about it, because that road went somewhere he wasn't sure he was ready to walk yet, and he had a 6:30 muster and a sailor with a family crisis on his plate, and he could not afford to be operating on 2 hours of sleep because he'd spent the night analyzing Dana Holloway's sentence construction. He closed his eyes. He did not sleep well. 3 days went by. Normal days, more or less. Marcus picked Lily up from school. He made dinner, actual dinner, not the box stuff, because he'd made a quiet, private promise to himself after the grilled cheese situation. He read horse books at bedtime. He did his job, which was demanding in the way that Navy jobs always were, which meant that by the time 6 o'clock rolled around, the tank was usually running low. He and Dana texted the way they always did about nothing, and about everything, voice memos about shows they were both watching. Her sending him an article about something she thought he should read, and then immediately following up with, "Okay, you don't have to read all of it, just the 3rd paragraph." Him sending her a photo of something Lily had drawn that she needed to see immediately. Normal. Easy. Like nothing had shifted. Except something had shifted. Marcus could feel it the way you can feel a change in weather before it arrives. Not in anything you can point to, just in the air. On the 4th day, Dana called him at noon. "I need a favor," she said, which was unusual. Dana gave favors. She rarely asked for them. "What kind of favor?" "I need someone to tell me I'm not making a mistake." Marcus sat up a little straighter. He was at his desk eating a sandwich he'd already forgotten about. "What mistake?" She exhaled. "There's a position opening up at the hospital." Administration, not nursing, before you ask, yes, I know, and yes, I've thought about it. It's a step back from the floor, which I never thought I'd want, but the hours are different, and She stopped herself. The reasons don't matter. I just need someone to tell me it's not crazy to want a different version of my life than the one I've been running. It's not crazy, Marcus said. You didn't even think about it. I didn't have to. It's not crazy. A pause. He could hear her breathing, which meant she was somewhere quiet. Dana Holloway was almost never somewhere quiet. She worked long shifts at the hospital and spent her off hours in motion errands, her sister's kids' friends who needed things. The fact that she'd gone somewhere quiet to make this call meant she was more unsettled than she was letting on. What if I'm running away from something? She said. Are you? I don't know. Maybe. The floor is... Another pause. It's a lot. It's been a lot for a while. I come home and I sit on my couch and I can't talk for like an hour. Not to anyone. I just have to be completely silent. That doesn't sound like running away, Marcus said. That sounds like you've been at capacity for a long time and you're finally paying attention to it. She was quiet for a moment. When did you get smart about this stuff? I'm not smart about this stuff. I'm just listening to you. That's literally the definition of being smart about it, Marcus. Apply for the job, he said. She didn't say anything immediately. He could feel her sitting with it. What if it changes things? She said finally. I've been in that ward for 8 years. I know those people. I know how everything works. What if I leave and Dana. He said her name the way she said his. Just the name. Enough. Apply for the job. She laughed a short surprise sound, like she hadn't expected to. Okay? Yeah. Okay. He could hear her standing up, the sound of her shifting back into motion. Sorry, I don't know why I called you. Because I was going to tell you the truth. You always do, she said, and then quieter. That's the thing about you, Marcus. You always do. She hung up before it could become anything more than that. Marcus sat at his desk and looked at the sandwich he'd forgotten about and thought about capacity. About running at a deficit long enough that you stop noticing the sound of the engine straining. About the specific courage it takes to want something different when the thing you have is something a lot of people would call enough. He thought about himself 7 years ago when he'd decided to marry Rebecca, despite a voice somewhere in the back of him that had been trying with increasing urgency to ask him a question he wasn't ready for. He'd mistaken the loudness of the present for a reason not to listen to quieter things. He was not going to do that again. It was Lily who changed the equation the way Lily had a habit of doing without trying. Saturday morning. Marcus was at the kitchen table with coffee and his phone half reviewing a document he needed to sign off on, and Lily came downstairs in her pajamas, the ones with the cartoon frogs, and sat across from him, and looked at him with the particular focused expression that meant she'd been thinking about something for a while. Daddy? Does Dana have kids? Marcus looked up. No. Why? Lily considered this. Does she want them? I don't know, Bug. That's kind of a personal question. But she'd be good at it, Lily said with the absolute certainty of someone stating a mathematical fact. She knows about dragons, and she doesn't do that thing. What thing? The thing where adults ask you questions but they're not really listening to the answer. They're just asking, so you'll think they're listening. She picked up Marcus's coffee mug, sniffed it, made a face, and set it back down. Dana actually listens, you can tell. Marcus set his phone face down. Yeah, he said. You can tell. Is she your girlfriend? The question landed with the gentle precision of a depth charge. No, Marcus said. Why not? Because we're friends. Lily looked at him with an expression that on a 7-year-old's face had absolutely no business being that knowing. That's not a reason. It's Yes, it is, actually. Craig was Mom's friend first. Marcus took a long sip of his coffee and said nothing, because there was nothing in the parental playbook for this particular conversation, and he'd already mentally exhausted his options. I'm just saying, Lily said, slipping off the chair and heading toward the cereal cabinet with the focused air of someone who had made her point and was satisfied with the results. She comes over a lot, and she brings spring rolls, and she knows about dragons. Those are high qualifications. The highest. She pulled out the cereal box and looked at him over her shoulder. I like her, Daddy. I know you do, Bug. Do you like her? Yes. Like her. Marcus put his coffee down. Where did you even learn that phrase? Lily shrugged elaborately, which meant she knew exactly where she'd learned it and wasn't planning to say. Everyone knows that phrase. You're in second grade. Second grade is very advanced now. She poured cereal, completely unconcerned. I'm just asking. Marcus looked at his daughter, this small, impossible person with her frog pajamas, and her dragon theories, and her 8-year-old's certainty that the world was navigable if you just paid attention and felt something in his chest do something complicated. Get your cereal, he said. That's not a no, Lily said cheerfully, and climbed back onto her chair. He called Dana that afternoon. He hadn't planned to. He'd planned to take Lily to the park, and they did go to the park, and Lily ran herself thoroughly tired on the jungle gym, while Marcus sat on a bench and stared at the middle distance and had the same internal argument he'd been having for 4 days, going in circles. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat. He stopped at a light and looked at her in the rear-view mirror, mouth slightly open, head tilted at an angle that was going to hurt her neck, and thought not for the first time that the most important decisions of his life had been made in moments exactly like this one. Quiet moments. Ordinary moments. The kind of moments where the noise stopped long enough for something true to get through. He called Dana when Lily was napping. She picked up on the third ring. Hey. Hey. He sat on the back porch, the February afternoon cooler than it looked. Can I ask you something? Depends on the something. The other night when you left, you said something. A beat. I say a lot of things. Dana. Silence. Not the kind of silence that means nothing. The other kind. I know what I said, she said finally. What did you mean by it? More silence. He could hear her deciding something. I meant what I said, she told him. I usually do. I know you do. That's why I'm asking. She made a sound that was almost a laugh, but not quite. You know, for someone who keeps everything at arm's length, you pick really inconvenient times to be direct. I'm not at arm's length, he said, and he heard how it came out quiet, maybe more honest than he'd meant it to be, and he didn't walk it back. Dana was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, still her, but the careful part was gone. I've been your best friend for 6 years, Marcus, and I know your coffee order, and I know how you sound when you're running on empty, and I know that you put 3 dots after sleep tight every single night. And She stopped, started again. I'm not going to pretend that's nothing. I'm done pretending it's nothing. Something loosened in Marcus's chest that he hadn't realized he'd been holding tight. It's not nothing, he said. No, she agreed. It's really not. He leaned back in the porch chair and stared up at the sky. I've got a kid, he said. I've got a schedule that doesn't make sense, and a job that takes everything, and most days I can barely keep my head above water, and I know that's... Marcus. Her voice was firm now. I know all of that. I've known all of that. I've been standing next to all of that for 6 years, and I'm still here. Don't make it into a reason. I'm not. I'm trying to be honest with you. Then be honest. Don't manage me. He almost smiled at that. Only Dana could call him on managing someone when he was in the middle of being more open than he'd been in years. I don't know what I'm doing, he said. I want to be clear about that. I don't have a plan. I just know that the other night felt different, and I've been thinking about it, and I didn't want to be the person who thinks about something like this for too long and doesn't say anything. That's very evolved of you. I've been working on it. She laughed, and this time it was the full version of her laugh, warm and genuine, and a little reluctant, like she hadn't meant to let it out. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, we can. She seemed to be searching for the word. Figure it out, whatever it is. We can be honest about it, and not make it weird and just figure it out. What if it gets complicated? It's already complicated. It's been complicated. I'd rather complicated and honest than simple and... She stopped. You know what I mean. Yeah, Marcus said. I know what you mean. The following Tuesday, Dana came over without spring rolls. She came over because Marcus had texted her at 5:15, saying that Lily had a fever and Mrs. Patterson had a bad night, and he had a mandatory evening review on base he could not get out of, and he was working through options, not asking for help, just thinking out loud. He'd barely finished the text when Dana replied, "I'll be there at 6. Go to your review." He'd stood in the kitchen holding his phone, wanting to argue with her, and not quite being able to find the reason. She was there at 5:58. Lily, pale and slightly miserable on the couch, with a blanket pulled up to her chin, looked at Dana coming through the door, and said in the raspy voice of a child who was genuinely sick, but not so sick she couldn't make her feelings clear, "You came." "Did you think I wasn't going to?" Dana set her bag down and pressed her hand to Lily's forehead with the practiced ease of someone who did this professionally. 101. Have you taken anything? Daddy gave me medicine. What kind? The orange kind. Okay. Dana pulled the blanket up a little higher. Are you hungry? Kind of, not really. That's allowed? She looked at Marcus, who was standing by the door, still in his uniform keys, in his hand, guilt on his face. Go, she said. We're fine. Dana. She's got a low-grade fever, and she's conscious, and she's already told me she wants to watch the horse movie. We are going to watch the horse movie, and I'm going to make sure she drinks water, and you are going to go do your job. He looked at Lily. Lily gave him a small frog pajama-level wave from the couch. Go, Daddy. Dana's here. He went. He spent the next 2 hours in a review meeting that required his full attention and only got about 60% of it, the other 40 being quietly occupied by the knowledge that in his living room, Lily was watching a movie about a girl who talked to horses, and Donna was sitting next to her, and everything was okay. At 8:40, he pulled into the driveway. Dana met him at the door with her finger to her lips. She's out, she whispered. Fever broke about an hour ago. She ate half a piece of toast, and about 12 minutes into the movie she went out like a light. Thank you, Marcus said. He said it quietly because Lily was asleep, but also because thank you was doing a lot of work in that moment, and he wanted to make sure it landed. Dana looked at him. You've got to stop thanking me. I've got to stop needing to. That's not... She shook her head. That's not what I mean. I mean... She paused, and when she started again, her voice was careful in the way it had been on the phone. Deliberate. I don't come over here because you need help, Marcus. I come over here because... She stopped. I come over because I want to. There's a difference. And I need you to understand that difference. He understood it. He stood in the entryway of his house, still in his uniform, and he understood it completely. And he also understood that understanding it and knowing what to do with it were two different problems. Lily said something to me. Dana said a little quieter. Yeah. She woke up for a minute, right when the fever broke, and she was kind of in that half-awake place, where she wasn't totally sure where she was. And she looked at me, and she said... Dana smiled just slightly, like the memory was doing something to her expression she wasn't controlling. Are you staying? Marcus went very still. And I said, for tonight, yeah. And she said... Dana looked down for a second, then back up. Good. I like it when you're here. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet you only get when a child is sleeping somewhere in it. Then she went back to sleep, Dana said. And I sat there for a while. Dana. I'm not trying to make it into something, she said quickly. I'm telling you what happened. Because you asked me to be honest, and I'm being honest. I'm not trying to talk you out of it, Marcus said. He exhaled. Took a step closer, not much, just enough. I'm trying to figure out how to say that I think I've been in the middle of something with you for a long time, and I didn't let myself see it, and now I'm seeing it, and I don't want to move slow just because slow feels safe. Dana looked at him for a long moment. The careful expression shifted. Something warmer came through. You're not moving slow, she said. You're just moving at the speed of someone who's afraid of breaking something good. Aren't you? Terrified, she said simply. Doesn't mean I'm not moving anyway. The space between them held something he didn't have a word for yet. He was working on finding one. Are you staying tonight? He asked. Not the way Lily had meant it, different, practical, easy. It's late. You've been here all evening. She tilted her head, considered. I'll stay until you've checked on her. And eaten something. You haven't eaten. I had a sandwich at 2. That's not eating, that's a placeholder. She turned and went back toward the kitchen, already knowing where everything was already moving through his space with the ease of someone who belonged in it. Eat, then I'll go. He followed her. He didn't check the time when she finally left. He knew it was late, but the evening had that particular quality where time stopped mattering, where what was happening in the room was more real than the clock on the wall. He stood at the door after she left, same as he had before, listening to the sound of her car. Then he went to check on Lily. She was sleeping the deep, boneless sleep of a child whose fever had finally broken. Her cheeks were still slightly pink, but her breathing was even. He stood at the edge of her bed and watched her for a moment, and the thing he'd been feeling all week, the unnamed thing, sat quiet in his chest, like something that had finally stopped needing to be managed. He pulled out his phone. My princess. I love you. Sleep tight, princess. Dream of castles and dragons. 3 dots after sleep tight, right where they always were. Then he locked the screen and stood there in the dark of Lily's room, his daughter asleep. The house quiet, Dana's car already gone down the street, and her voice still somewhere in the air of the place. He was figuring it out, slowly, honestly, at the speed of someone who was afraid of breaking something good, which was the right speed for the right reasons. He was figuring it out. The week after Lily's fever, something changed in the rhythm between Marcus and Dana. It wasn't loud. Nothing between them ever got loud. That was the thing about 6 years of real friendship, it didn't need volume to communicate. But the rhythm changed the way a song changes when someone adds an instrument you didn't know was missing. The same melody, the same structure, but fuller. More present. Like you'd been listening through a wall this whole time and someone had finally opened the door. Dana started texting him in the mornings. Not about anything important, not about plans or logistics, just small things. A news headline she found absurd. A photo of something she'd seen on her drive to the hospital. Once at 7:12 a.m. on a Wednesday, just a voice memo of 40 seconds where she described with complete deadpan sincerity her opinion on the way the hospital elevator played a different elevator music genre on each floor and what that said about institutional decision-making. Marcus had listened to it in the parking lot of Lily's school and laughed harder than he had in weeks and texted back, "Floor 4 is jazz because floor 4 gave up." She replied, "Floor 4 is self-aware. Floor 4 has accepted its fate." It was nothing. It was also somehow everything, the kind of nothing that you only exchange with one specific person, the shorthand that builds up over years without you meaning it to, until one day you realize that no one else would get it, and you don't particularly want them to. Lily noticed the morning texts. She noticed because Marcus's phone would buzz at breakfast, and he'd pick it up, and whatever expression he'd been wearing would shift, not dramatically, just slightly, in a way that Lily had apparently cataloged with the same quiet precision she applied to everything else. She didn't say anything about it. She just watched him with those eyes that saw too much, and ate her cereal, and sometimes smiled into the bowl. He was 38 years old, and his 7-year-old daughter was tracking his emotional state through breakfast table observations. He chose not to examine this too closely. The thing nobody tells you about moving toward something new, something that matters, is that it's not a straight line. Marcus had thought maybe it would be once they'd been honest with each other. He'd thought that honesty was the hard part, that once you got past it, the rest settled into place. What actually happened was that honesty just cleared the ground. You still had to build something on it. And building was slow. Building was two people who'd been friends for 6 years, carefully feeling out the edges of something different, trying not to go too fast, and also trying not to use caution as an excuse to stand still. They had dinner together on a Thursday night, just the three of them, and it was easy and warm, and Marcus made actual food, chicken, vegetables, the whole thing. And Dana helped Lily with a project for school that involved cutting out pictures from magazines and gluing them onto poster board. And by 8 o'clock, there was glue on the kitchen table, and Lily was asleep on the couch with the poster board half finished across her lap. And Marcus and Dana were at the table with their coffee talking low so they didn't wake her. "She's going to wake up in an hour and want to finish it," Marcus said. "Probably. And then she'll be awake until midnight." "That's a you problem," Dana said. "I'll be home by then." "You could stay." He said it evenly, the same way he'd said it before. Practical, easy, leaving room. She looked at him over the rim of her mug. "It's Thursday." "I know what day it is. I have an early shift." "I know." She set her mug down, looked at him with the expression that meant she was deciding something. "Marcus, I'm not—" He stopped, tried again. "I'm not pushing anything. I just—" He glanced at Lily on the couch, the poster board across her lap, glue probably drying on her fingers. "I like it. When you're here. Lily likes it. I'm not trying to make that into a bigger statement than it is." "It's not a small statement," Dana said. "No," he agreed. "It's not." She looked at Lily. Something moved across her face that she didn't try to hide. "I'll stay until she wakes up and finishes the poster board," she said. "Then I need to go." "That works." She picked her mug back up. "Stop looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you've figured something out." "I haven't figured anything out," Marcus said. "I'm in the middle of figuring. There's a difference." She shook her head, but she was almost smiling. "You're the most frustrating person I know." "That's not what you said 6 years ago." 6 years ago, I had lower standards. Lily woke up 45 minutes later, exactly as predicted, with the sudden urgent energy of a child who had a project to finish and had misplaced approximately 20 minutes of her evening. Dana helped her finish the poster board while Marcus cleaned up the kitchen, and at 9:50, Dana put on her coat and said goodnight to Lily, who wrapped both arms around her and said muffled into Dana's shoulder, "Come back soon." And then said goodnight to Marcus in the doorway, quiet and close, and with the particular quality of someone who is also saying something else entirely. He walked her to her car. He hadn't done that before. They both noticed it. Neither of them mentioned it. "The poster board looks great," he said because he needed to say something. She did most of it. She always takes the credit, and you always deflect the credit. You two are well matched. Dana looked at him in the dark of the driveway. "We are," she said. "Just that." And got in her car. He stood in the driveway until the taillights disappeared. Then he went back inside where Lily was admiring her finished poster board with the satisfaction of an artist reviewing a completed canvas. "Donna's really good at cutting straight lines," Lily announced. "She is. She should come to school and help with the art projects." "That's an interesting pitch." Lily turned to look at him. "Daddy, are you going to ask her to be your girlfriend or not?" Marcus picked up the scissors and glue stick from the table. "Bedtime." "That's still not a no." "Lily, I'm just asking because Tyler's dad took a long time to ask his girlfriend, and she almost left, and then they were both sad, and it was a whole thing. She gathered her poster board with great care. I'm just saying, time is important. You are 7 years old. Almost 8. She headed for the stairs with the dignity of someone who had made their point and was choosing not to belabor it. Good night, Daddy. He stood in the kitchen holding a glue stick. She was almost 8. The call came on a Friday afternoon, and it changed things. Marcus was on base between sessions when his phone rang with Rebecca's number. He picked up out of habit, and also because Rebecca didn't call unless it was something about Lily, and anything about Lily required an immediate answer. Hey. Her voice was careful, the way it got when she was about to say something she knew he wouldn't like. Do you have a minute? What's wrong with Lily? Nothing's wrong with Lily. Lily's fine. She's here with me this weekend. She's completely fine. A pause. Craig got a job offer. In Seattle. Marcus stood very still. When? He found out yesterday. It's a good offer, Marcus. It's a really good offer. And we've been talking about it, and Craig we want to explore it. The word explore did a lot of work in that sentence. Marcus recognized it for what it was. You're moving to Seattle, he said. We haven't decided anything yet. Rebecca. We haven't. I'm telling you because you deserve to know it's on the table, that's all. Nothing's decided. He walked outside, needed the air. The February afternoon hit him, and he stood on the pavement and made himself breathe through it before he said anything else, because the things trying to come out of his mouth right now were not things that would help. She's my daughter, he said finally. His voice came out flat. He couldn't make it anything else. I know. Whatever you're exploring, that's the part you need to keep at the front of the conversation. She's my daughter. Marcus, I know. I'm not. He stopped. I'm not fighting with you right now. I'm telling you that before any decisions get made, I need to be part of that conversation. Lily needs to be part of that conversation. She's 7 years old, and she has a father who is here. I know you're here. I know that. He didn't say anything else. There wasn't a next thing to say that wouldn't open a door he couldn't afford to open on a Friday afternoon with 6 hours left in his workday. I'll call you next week, Rebecca said. Nothing is decided. Yeah, he said. Okay. He hung up and stood on the pavement for a long time. Then he went back inside and finished his workday, because that was the only thing he could control, and control was the only tool he knew how to use when everything else started sliding. He didn't call Dana. He didn't text her. He picked Lily up from school. It was his weekend, and he made dinner, and they watched television, and he read the horse book and tucked her in and stood in her doorway longer than usual, watching her breathe, trying not to do the math on how many hours it took to drive to Seattle. He sent the goodnight text. 3 dots after sleep tight. Then he sat on the back porch in the cold and stared at nothing. His phone buzzed. Dana. Not a text, a call. 9:45 p.m. She didn't usually call this late on a Friday unless something had pushed her to. He picked up. Hey. Hey. She heard it immediately. He knew she would. 6 years of his voice, and she could tell the difference between his regular tired and his something is wrong tired without him saying a word. What happened? He told her. All of it. He kept his voice level because the alternative to level was something he didn't want to do, and Dana listened without interrupting, which was not her default. Dana was an interrupter by nature. Oh wait, I just want to say person, but she was silent through the whole thing, and that silence was the most supportive thing she could have offered. When he finished, she said, "How bad is it right now, on a scale?" 7, he said. Maybe 8. Okay. Her voice was steady. She said nothing's decided. She said nothing's decided. Do you believe her? I believe she thinks that's true. He exhaled. I think Craig already has a number in his head, and Rebecca is the kind of person who talks herself into things gradually enough that she doesn't notice she's already decided. You know her. I was married to her for 4 years. So what do you need right now? He thought about it. Actually thought about it, because Dana asked questions like that and expected you to actually answer them. I don't know, I needed to say it out loud to someone who wasn't going to tell me it's going to be fine. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be fine, Dana said. I'm going to tell you that you're a good father, and you have rights, and you have options, and none of them have been taken away yet. I'm going to tell you that Rebecca taking Lily to Seattle without a legal agreement is not a simple thing for her to do. And I'm going to tell you... Her voice shifted slightly, softer. I'm going to tell you that you are not dealing with this alone. Whatever the shape of that ends up being, you're not alone in this. He closed his eyes, leaned his head back. Dana? What? Thank you. I told you to stop doing that. I'm going to keep doing it. She made a sound that was half exasperated, half something warmer. Are you going to be okay tonight? Yeah, Lily's asleep. I'm going to sit out here for a while and then go to bed. You're outside? It's February. It helps. You're such a sailor, she said, which made him almost smile, which was exactly why she said it. Get some sleep, he told her. You've got an early shift. I'll sleep when I know you're inside. He stood up, went back in. I'm inside. Good, lock the door. I always lock the door. I know, I just like saying it. A pause. Good night, Marcus. Good night. He stood in the kitchen after he hung up phone in his hand, the house quiet around him, and Lily asleep upstairs, and the cold still on his jacket from the porch. He thought about Seattle. He thought about custody arrangements and legal consultations and all the practical, logistical grinding machinery of the thing Rebecca had put on the table today. He let himself think about it for exactly 60 more seconds, because he was not going to solve it tonight, and he knew that, but he needed to give it that minute before he could let it rest. Then he thought about Dana. About you're not dealing with this alone. About the way she'd gone quiet and listened when he'd talked, which was the thing she did when something mattered enough that she didn't want to risk saying the wrong thing, which meant this mattered. He knew what he was doing. He was figuring out how to separate the urgency of one thing from the rightness of another, because the last thing he wanted was to move toward Dana faster, because he was scared, because some external pressure was pressing in from outside. He'd made that mistake before. He'd moved toward things for the wrong reasons before, and worn the consequences of it for years. This had to be the right reasons. Only the right reasons. He was still working on knowing the difference. Saturday he took Lily to her friend Emma's birthday party, which was at one of those indoor play centers with the foam pits and the climbing walls and the general aesthetic of organized chaos. He stood against the wall with 4 other parents and watched Lily launch herself into a foam pit with complete and total commitment, no hesitation, and thought that his daughter had a gift for deciding something and then just doing it, no analysis, no second guessing. He did not have that gift. He was working on it. His phone buzzed. Dana, how's the birthday party? Loud, he typed back. There's a DJ at a 7-year-old's birthday party. A DJ. Bold choice. Is he taking requests? I'm not going to ask. Ask him to play something slow. Do a dramatic lean against the wall. Marcus looked up from his phone to find Lily watching him from across the room, mid-bounce on a trampoline, pointing at him with a look that said she knew exactly who he was texting. He pocketed the phone. She grinned and bounced higher. He walked over to another dad, a guy named Paul, Lily's friend, Sophie's father. The kind of easy-talking person who could make conversation at a foam pit party without it feeling like effort. That your girl? Paul asked, nodding toward Lily. Yeah, Lily. She's fearless. Sophie's still looking at the foam pit, deciding if she wants to commit. Lily doesn't really have a hesitation setting, Marcus said. Paul laughed. Sophie's got too much of one. I keep trying to tell her the foam pit's not going anywhere, just jump. He watched the kids for a moment. You here with your wife? No. Marcus said it without any drag. He'd had 2 years to practice. Just me. Ah, yeah, we've got a few solo dads in the class. He shook his head. Respect, man. I do it for 1 weekend a month when my wife's at her sister's, and by Sunday, I'm exhausted. I don't know how the full-timers do it. You figure it out, Marcus said. You don't really have a choice. I guess that's true. Paul looked at him sideways. You got family nearby. Help you out. Marcus thought about Dana, about spring rolls and straight-cut lines on poster board, and I'll stay until she wakes up. Yeah, he said. I've got someone. He said it the way you say something when you're testing how it sounds, hearing it in his own voice for the first time. I've got someone. It felt true, more than he'd expected it to. He pulled out his phone, typed, Lily just did her 3rd foam pit dive. No hesitation, full commit every time. Dana replied in under a minute. She's going to be unstoppable. Then, like her dad. He stared at those 2 words. Then he put his phone in his pocket and watched his daughter launch herself into the foam pit for the 4th time, all in no hesitation, landing with both arms out, and a laugh so loud he could hear it across the room over the DJ and the 37 other children and all the noise. Like her dad, Dana had said. He was trying. The thing about building something slowly and honestly is that you don't always get to control the pace. Sometimes something happens that accelerates the timeline, whether you're ready or not, and you find yourself standing in a moment that requires you to be more decided than you thought you were. That moment came on a Sunday evening. Marcus had just put Lily to bed. Dana had come for dinner, just dinner, nothing planned. She'd called at 4 and said she was making chicken soup, whether he wanted it or not, which he had interpreted correctly as meaning she was thinking about the Seattle thing and wanted to be in the same room with him, and they'd eaten and cleaned up, and now they were in the living room, the TV on low, not really watching it. Dana was on the couch, Marcus was in the chair. And then, at some point, in the middle of a conversation about the Seattle situation and what his options were, lawyers, custody modification, all the logistics of it, Dana said something that stopped the whole conversation. What if I moved? Marcus went still. What? Not. She held up a hand. Not for that reason. Not to. I'm not making it about us. I've been thinking about this since Rebecca's call. Hear me out. She leaned forward. The hospital administrator position. It's higher pay, normal hours, I'd have evenings free. And I've been thinking about the Seattle thing and what it would mean for you, and I've been thinking about Lily. She stopped. I've been thinking about you both a lot, Marcus. And I have been in that ER for 8 years, and I was already thinking about changing something, and She looked directly at him. I want to be here, not as a favor, not as your best friend doing you a solid. I want to be actually consistently reliably here, and I've been scared to say that out loud because I don't know what it means yet, and I don't want to promise something I can't keep. Marcus did not say anything immediately, because what she'd just said required more than an immediate answer, and she knew that, and she was waiting. Dana, he said finally. Don't manage this. Just tell me what you're thinking. I'm thinking. He stopped. Tried again. I'm thinking that 6 years ago, I made a decision in my life for the wrong reasons, and I swore I would not do that again, and I meant it. And I need you to know that what I'm about to say is not about Seattle, and it's not about being scared, and it's not about needing someone. She was watching him very carefully. I want you here, he said. Not because I need help and you're offering, because you're the person I want in this house, the person I want at that table, the person... He stopped. Something in his voice was doing something he hadn't expected, and he took a breath and let it steady. Lily said something to me a few weeks ago. She said that's not a reason when I tried to explain why things were the way they were. And she was 7 years old, and she was completely right, and I've been thinking about it since. Dana's expression had changed. The careful part was gone again, the same way it had gone on the phone that night, and what was left underneath it was the real version, not armor, just her. Say it, she said quietly. Just say the thing. So he did. "I love you," Marcus said. "Not the text message version. Not the wrong number version. I've been in love with you for a long time, and I didn't let myself see it. And now I see it. And I am not going to sit across a room from you any longer and not say so." The room was very quiet. Dana looked at him for a long moment, and then she said in a voice that was steady and certain and entirely hers, "I know. I've known for a while. I was waiting for you to catch up." He laughed. It came out surprised and real, and a little undone, which was not a combination he was familiar with. "You could have said something." "I did say something. I said if you ever texted me again at 8:30 at night, I wouldn't mind." She tilted her head. "That was extremely obvious, by the way." "That was not obvious." "It was obvious, Marcus." "You said wrong number, I assume." "Because I was nervous." She stood up from the couch, crossed the room, stopped in front of the chair where he was sitting, and looked down at him with the expression he'd been cataloging for 6 years, the real one, the whole thing, nothing held back. "You are the most important person in my life. You and that girl upstairs. And I have been trying to figure out how to say that without blowing up something I couldn't afford to lose." He stood up. They were very close. He could have counted the seconds of the silence, but he didn't. "You're not going to lose it," he said. "I know," she said. "I figured that out about 3 weeks ago when you called me and described burning a grilled cheese, and I realized I would take any version of your disaster of a life over any polished version of anyone else's." "That's very romantic." "I thought so." He reached out and took her hand. Just that. Just her hand in his, which was both the smallest possible thing and also not small at all. "We're going to figure this out," he said. "We're already figuring it out. At the right speed. At exactly the right speed." She squeezed his hand once. Deliberate, certain. "We're going to be okay, Marcus." He believed her. That was the thing, not just that he wanted to, but that he actually did. Dana Holloway did not say things she didn't mean, and she did not make promises she couldn't keep, and she was standing in his living room holding his hand and telling him they were going to be okay. And for the first time in a long time, he felt the weight of almost lift off his chest. It didn't disappear. There was still Seattle on the table, and a legal conversation ahead of him, and a daughter upstairs who was almost 8, and still didn't have enough certainty in her small life. There was still a long road, but he wasn't standing at the beginning of it alone anymore. The thing about finally saying the true thing out loud is that the world doesn't pause to let you stay in the moment. It just keeps moving the way it always does, indifferent to the fact that something important just happened in a living room in a quiet house on a Sunday night. Donna left at 11. Marcus stood at the door and watched her car, and felt the same thing he always felt when she left, that particular absence, specific to her, like a frequency going quiet. But tonight it was different. Tonight it wasn't weighted with things unsaid. It was just the ordinary distance of two people who weren't in the same place yet, which was a problem with a solution, which was a completely different thing from the kind of distance that has no solution at all. He locked the door, went upstairs, checked on Lily, who was sprawled across her bed at an angle that defied geometry, one arm hanging off the edge, her hair everywhere. He straightened her blanket. She didn't stir. He stood there longer than usual. He did this more and more lately, stood at the edge of Lily's bed and just watched her sleep, like storing something up. Like a man who knew better than to take a quiet moment for granted. He went to bed. He slept. Actually slept, which had not been a reliable experience for the last 3 weeks. He woke up at 6:15, feeling something he hadn't felt in a while, not rested exactly, but present. Like the background static that had been running underneath everything had turned down a notch. He made coffee. Lily came downstairs at 6:58 in the frog pajamas, which had officially become her default morning uniform, regardless of weather season or the gentle suggestions he occasionally floated about the owl pajamas or the ones with the dinosaurs. "You look different." Lily announced, sitting down and studying him with the focused attention of a scientist who has noticed an anomaly. "Good morning to you too." "Did something happen?" "Nothing happened. Eat your cereal." Lily poured her cereal. Did not stop looking at him. "You slept." "I always sleep." "Not like that. You usually have the face." "What face?" She made a vague gesture toward her own face encompassing the general concept. "The tired but not going to say so face. You don't have it this morning." Marcus drank his coffee. "You're very observant for someone who's not yet 8. "I'll be 8 in 6 weeks, Lily said firmly. "And you're not going to tell me what happened?" "Nothing happened." She looked at him for one more long moment. Then she turned her attention to her cereal with the air of someone who had filed information away for later use. "Did Dana stay over?" He set his mug down. "No." "Oh." A pause. "But she was here late." "How do you know that?" "I woke up for a minute and heard talking." She said it without any guilt whatsoever. "It sounded like a good talking." "A good talking." "Yeah. Not a worried talking. A good one." She ate a spoonful. "I went back to sleep." Marcus looked at his daughter, his almost 8-year-old daughter who tracked conversation tone from upstairs while half asleep. "I'm going to start playing white noise in the hallway," he said. "That won't help," Lily said serenely. "I'll just hear the white noise." He called the lawyer on Monday morning. Her name was Janet Merrill, a family attorney his base legal counsel had referred him to 3 weeks ago when the Seattle conversation was still theoretical, because Marcus had learned a long time ago that you prepare for the storm before it arrives, not during. He'd put off the call. He was done putting it off. Janet was direct, which he appreciated. She laid it out plainly. Rebecca couldn't relocate Lily out of state unilaterally under their current custody agreement. Any modification would require either his consent or a court order, and courts in these situations weighed a lot of factors: both parents' involvement, the child's established relationships, stability, schooling. His consistent presence in Lily's life was an asset. His Navy schedule was a complication, but not an insurmountable one. "The key," Janet said, "is documentation. Your involvement, consistency. If this goes to modification proceedings, you want a clear record of who's been showing up." "I've been showing up," Marcus said. "Then we document it. Start a log if you haven't already. School pickups, medical appointments, extracurriculars, everything. Notes on conversations with your daughter, your routine with her. Date and time." A pause. "And if there's anyone else consistently involved in her care, a partner, a family member, that's relevant context too." He thought about Dana, about spring rolls and straight-cut poster board lines, and "I'll stay until she wakes up." "Yeah," he said. "There's someone." He said it the same way he'd said it at the birthday party, testing the sound again. It still felt true. "Good," Janet said. "Stability looks like something in a courtroom. We want yours to look like something." He hung up and sat at his desk for a minute, thinking about the word stability and what it actually meant, not as a legal concept, but as the thing itself. He thought he'd understood it before. He'd had a marriage that looked stable from the outside right up until it didn't. He'd had a life that ran on schedule and duty and performance, and he'd called that stability, and maybe part of it was, but part of it had been just motion. Staying in motion so you don't have to look too closely at whether you're going somewhere. What he had now felt different. It didn't look as clean from the outside. The schedule was still brutal. The margins were still thin. There were still burned grilled cheeses in the history of this household. But the foundation felt different. More like actual ground and less like a picture of ground. He texted Dana. Called the lawyer. Starting documentation. She replied in 4 minutes. "Good. What do you need from me?" Not a question. A statement. He read it twice. "Just be you," he typed back. Her reply came in under a minute. "Already doing that. It's my strongest skill." He smiled at his phone. "Put it away. Got back to work. Rebecca called on Wednesday. He was in the parking lot of Lily's school 5 minutes early for pickup, which he'd been making a point of lately, not just on time, 5 minutes early, because the record mattered now, and also because Lily's face when she came out and saw him already waiting was worth the 10 minutes of rearranging his afternoon schedule. He answered. Marcus. Rebecca's voice had that careful quality again, but something else in it tonight. Something that sounded almost like discomfort. Craig and I talked, more seriously this time. He waited. He accepted the position. Marcus closed his eyes, opened them. Okay. I want you to know that I'm not making any decisions about Lily unilaterally. I know what the agreement says. I know what the law says. She paused. But we need to have a real conversation about this. A serious one. I hired a lawyer. A long beat of silence. I figured you might. I'm not trying to make this a fight, Rebecca. I'm trying to protect my relationship with my daughter. Those are different things. I know. And she sounded like she did, which was the hardest part about Rebecca. She was not a bad person, and she was not a bad mother, and she had never once tried to be cruel to him. She just also made decisions in the direction of her own life, and sometimes those decisions had aftershocks. Can we talk, the three of us, you, me, Craig, before lawyers just talking? You and Craig have already made a decision. We've made a decision about Craig's job. We haven't made a decision about Lily. He watched the school entrance. 3 kids came out, then 5 more, but not Lily yet. I'll meet with you, he said finally. But my lawyer is in the loop regardless. This isn't me being adversarial. This is me being a father. I understand. We'll talk about what a schedule looks like that keeps Lily connected to both of us. We'll talk about what's reasonable. But I need you to understand, Rebecca, I'm not signing anything that moves her 3,000 miles away and calls it a plan. I hear you. Good. The school doors opened wider, and he saw Lily's backpack, before he saw her, the purple one Dana had brought in September, bouncing as she came through the doors looking for him. She spotted the truck, and her whole face changed the way it always did, sudden and bright. He raised a hand. She started toward him at the specific trot that was almost but not quite running. I have to go. I'll have my lawyer reach out. He hung up just as Lily pulled the truck door open and climbed in with the energy of someone who had been waiting all day to be in this exact location. You're early, she said with enormous approval. 5 minutes. Tyler's dad is always late, like always. She dropped her backpack on the floor and buckled her seatbelt. What's for dinner? I was thinking tacos. Real tacos or the kit? Real ones. She considered this. Can Dana come? He pulled out of the parking lot. I'll ask her. She likes tacos. I know she does. She likes the lime one, the drink. Agua fresca. Yes, that. Lily nodded like this was settled. Ask her, he asked. Dana was at the tail end of a shift and said she'd be there by 6:30. Which meant the tacos were ready and cooling slightly on the counter when she walked in. Still in her scrubs, which meant it had been a day that didn't leave time for going home first. Lily announced this was fine, and that Dana could wear scrubs to dinner, and that she herself sometimes wore her frog pajamas to dinner, and it was a household that did not judge. A very advanced household, Dana said, washing her hands. 2nd grade is very advanced, Lily confirmed. Dana caught Marcus's eye over Lily's head. He was already cutting limes. She tilted her head, a small gesture, a question. You okay? He gave a small nod. Back. Yeah. She held his gaze for a second more, just making sure, then turned to help Lily arrange the toppings in what Lily had decided was the correct order. They ate. Lily talked about a disagreement on the playground that had involved a disputed ruling on the rules of a game whose rules Marcus could not follow no matter how many times it was explained. Dana followed it completely and offered a diplomatic analysis of the situation that satisfied Lily's sense of justice without throwing anyone under the bus, which Marcus privately thought was more skilled than most of what he did at work. After dinner, after dishes, after Lily had been extracted from the kitchen and deposited in front of her allotted evening television, Marcus told Dana about Rebecca's call. He told her standing in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, and she stood across from him and listened with her arms folded, not defensively, just focused the way she stood when she was taking something in seriously. When he finished, she said, "How are you sitting with it?" "Better than last week. Having Janet in the corner helps." He paused. "Rebecca's not a villain in this. I keep reminding myself of that. She's a person who's following her life, and some of the consequences land on mine." That's a very generous read. It's the accurate one. He looked at the counter. I'm angrier than that read sounds, but the accurate one is still the accurate one. Dana nodded slowly. What's the worst case? Worst case, they go to Seattle and the court modifies the agreement, and Lily's schedule changes dramatically, and I'm flying to Seattle to see my daughter on alternating weekends. He said it evenly. He'd practiced saying it evenly. That's the worst case. And it's survivable. It's terrible, and I'm going to fight hard to avoid it, but it's survivable. Lily would still know me. I would still be her father. Distance doesn't change what I am to her. No, Dana said quietly. It doesn't. The thing I keep coming back to is... He stopped. The thing is, I want to be the kind of father she actually has, not the best-case version of me in a perfect schedule. Not the guy who's always on time and never burns the grilled cheese. The actual version who shows up and keeps showing up regardless of what the calendar looks like. He looked at her. And I want her to have... He stopped again because this part was harder. Say it, Dana said. Same as before. Low and steady. Say the thing. I want her to have what she's been building. With you. He pushed off the counter. I know we're still figuring out what this is. I know we haven't defined anything, and I'm not trying to rush that. But she's attached to you, Dana, genuinely. And whatever happens with Seattle, whatever the schedule ends up looking like, I want that to be a constant for her. You. Being here. Being someone she can count on. Dana was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that means someone is making a real decision, not just waiting to respond. I already am, she said. I decided that before the conversation in the living room Sunday. I decided it when she was sick, and she looked at me and asked if I was staying. She met his eyes directly. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus. I need you to believe that the way I believe it. He believed her. Okay. Okay. Yeah. He crossed the kitchen, stood close. Okay. She looked up at him. You're doing the thing again. What thing? The thing where you've decided something and you're not saying it. I'm saying all of it. You're saying some of it. He put his hand on the side of her face. She went still. He could feel her breathing. I meant what I said Sunday, he told her. All of it. And I want you to know that I'm not in the middle of a crisis and using you as a life raft. I need you to know that. I know that. She said it without hesitation. How do you know? Because you've been slowly, painstakingly, infuriatingly walking toward this for weeks, instead of just... She made a small sound that was almost a laugh. You don't grab life rafts slowly, Marcus. You grab them fast. What you've been doing is deliberate. That's different. Infuriatingly, he repeated. I say what I mean. I know you do. He dropped his hand, stayed close. I want to take you somewhere. Just you and me. Not the three of us, not the house, just dinner. Actual dinner, not takeout in the kitchen. She raised an eyebrow. Are you asking me on a date? I'm asking you on a date. The corner of her mouth moved. The almost smile that preceded the real one. About time. I'm moving at the right speed. You're moving at a very specific speed, she said. I've been patient. I know you have. He stepped back, giving her room. giving them both room because Lily was 15 feet away in the living room, and this was not the moment for any more than what had already been said. Saturday. I'll get Mrs. Patterson for the evening. Saturday works. She glanced toward the living room. You should put her to bed. She's about to fall asleep on the couch again. She always falls asleep on the couch. And you always carry her up. Yeah. She's going to be too big for that one of these days. Don't tell me that. Dana smiled, the full one, real and warm and entirely hers. Go carry your kid to bed, Marcus. He went. Lily was indeed 3/4 gone on the couch, the television doing its one-sided conversation to a room with only one conscious occupant. Marcus turned it off and scooped her up. She was heavier than last year. Dana was right, this chapter was closing faster than he was ready for, and she stirred just enough to wrap her arms around his neck and make a sleepy sound. Dana's still here, she murmured. Yeah. Good. Her head dropped back to his shoulder. Keep her. He carried her up the stairs, tucked her in, stood at the edge of her bed in the dark, the same as always. Keep her, she'd said, half asleep, like it was simple, like it was obvious. The way she said everything that mattered. He came back downstairs to find Dana putting on her jacket, keys in hand, doing the end-of-evening thing she always did, quiet and efficient and no fanfare. She looked at him when he came off the last step. She say anything? Dana asked. She said good. Dana smiled, looked down at her keys for a second. Saturday. Saturday. She nodded once, walked to the door. He walked with her, the same as the Thursday of the poster board, the same new thing they were both pretending was casual. She opened the door and stepped out, then turned around on the front step and looked at him. For the record, she said, in the particular voice she reserved for things she'd been turning over for a while and had decided to finally say. 6 years ago, the week you got back from your second deployment, you brought me coffee. I was having a terrible day and you didn't know that, and you just showed up with coffee and you sat with me for 2 hours and you didn't try to fix anything, you just stayed. She tilted her head slightly. That's when I knew. Just so you know. Marcus stood in his doorway. He'd remembered that day. He hadn't known she'd filed it away as something significant. He hadn't known she'd been carrying it all this time. 6 years ago, he said. 6 years ago. She held his gaze, steady. You're not late, Marcus. You're exactly on time. You just needed to get there. She turned and walked to her car. He stood in the doorway in the February air and watched her go, and the thing that had been sitting quietly in his chest since Sunday opened up a little more the way a room opens when you push the windows out. He went inside. He stood in the kitchen. He thought about 6 years of showing up in ways he hadn't understood were showing up. About 3 dots after sleep tight. About coffee on a bad day, and 2 hours of staying without trying to fix anything. About the way Lily said, keep her with the ease of someone stating a fact about the physical world. He picked up his phone. He opened Dana's contact. Not Lily's this time. He stared at it for a second. Typed. 6 years ago, I didn't know what I was doing. I know now. He stared at it. He sent it. 3 dots appeared on her end almost immediately. Then I know you do. Good night, Marcus. He set the phone face down on the counter and thought about Saturday, about something simple and real, just the two of them. Nothing to manage and nothing to prove. About the road ahead, Seattle and lawyers and custody logistics and all the hard grinding practical machinery of a life being reorganized, and the fact that it was still a road that could be walked. He was not the same man who'd stood in this kitchen 3 weeks ago and accidentally sent a text to the wrong person and felt the world tilt sideways. He was the same man, but steadier, more honest, less alone. The only question now was what they were going to build from here, and for the first time in a long time, he was not afraid of the answer. He pulled out his phone again. Opened Lily's contact. I love you. Sleep tight, princess. Dream of castles and dragons. 3 dots after sleep tight. Right where they always were. Right where Dana had noticed them 6 years in before he'd known she was paying that kind of attention. He sent it. Then he turned off the kitchen light and went to get ready for what came next. Saturday came, the way good things tend to come quietly, without announcement slipping in between the ordinary machinery of the week, like it had always been scheduled there, and Marcus just hadn't noticed until it arrived. Mrs. Patterson showed up at 6:15 with her crossword puzzle book and her reading glasses, and the particular brand of cheerful authority she carried into every room, which Lily responded to, the way she responded to all competent people with immediate respect and a detailed briefing on the current state of affairs. The remote is on the couch, Lily told her very seriously. Not the cushion side, the armrest side. And the good snacks are on the second shelf, not the first shelf, because Daddy puts the healthy ones on the first shelf thinking, I don't know. I can hear you, Marcus said from the hallway. I know, Lily said serenely. I'm telling Mrs. Patterson the important things. Mrs. Patterson settled into the armchair with the ease of a woman who had been navigating this household long enough to find it comfortable. Go, she told Marcus over the top of her crossword book. We're fine. He looked at Lily. Lily was already cross-legged on the couch with the remote having located it on the armrest side exactly as described. She looked up at him with the expression that had replaced the worried about Daddy expression over the last few weeks. Lighter, more settled, like something in the background of her small life, had finally stopped making noise. Have fun, she said. And then, because she was almost 8, and she had inherited his timing, don't be late. He was not late. He picked Dana up at 6:40, and she came out of her apartment building in a blue dress he hadn't seen before, and he was standing by the truck, and he did not say anything profound when he saw her, because he was not that kind of man. He just looked at her the way you look at something that has always been in your life, but that you're seeing clearly for the first time, and he said, hey. And she said, hey, back in the voice that meant she knew exactly what that look meant, and was choosing not to make it complicated, which was one of about 40 things he loved about her. The restaurant was not fancy in the way that fancy usually announces itself. It was small and warm, and the kind of place where the tables were close together, and the lighting was low, and the menu was short, because everything on it was actually good. His buddy from base had recommended it 6 months ago, and Marcus had put it in his phone under Someday, and then not thought about it again until this week, when Someday had a date. They ordered. They talked. Not about Seattle. Not about lawyers, not about schedules or logistics or any of the machinery. They talked the way they always talked about everything and nothing about a podcast. Dana had been listening to that made her angry in a way she found oddly enjoyable about a situation on base that Marcus had been navigating for weeks, that had finally resolved itself in an outcome no one had predicted about the horse book series, which Lily had apparently decided was the foundation of her entire worldview, and which Marcus had now read enough of to have opinions about the secondary characters. The aunt is underwritten, Dana said very firmly. The aunt is barely in it. That's the problem. She clearly has a whole life, and the author just uses her as a plot device to get the protagonist to the ranch and then forgets about her. You've read 3 of these books. Lily made me. She pointed at him with her fork. And now, I'm invested against my will. I need the aunt to get a proper arc. I'll pass that along to the author. Please do. He refilled her water glass. She was watching him when he looked up. Not the careful version of watching. The real one. What? He said. Nothing. She picked up her glass. I'm just thinking about something Lily said to me last week. What did she say? Dana set the glass down. She was almost smiling. She told me that she'd done research. Research. On the topic of, and I'm quoting, what makes a good family. She said she'd been thinking about it since her friend Sophie's birthday party, and she'd asked her teacher some questions, and she'd also talked to Mrs. Patterson, and she'd arrived at a conclusion. Marcus was already slightly afraid of where this was going. What conclusion? she said, and again direct quote, "A good family is just people who keep showing up for each other even when it's hard. That's it. That's the whole thing." Dana looked at him. "She's 7 years old." "Almost 8, Marcus said quietly. "Almost 8. Dana shook her head. She said it so matter-of-factly, like she'd worked out a math problem, and the answer was obvious, and she wasn't sure why adults made it so complicated. She paused. "I didn't have a response. I just said, 'Yeah, bug. That's the whole thing.'" And she nodded like I'd confirmed something she already knew, and went back to her book. Marcus looked at the table for a moment. He thought about Lily at 7, almost 8, doing quiet research on the structure of a good life, arriving at a definition that cut through everything he'd spent years overcomplicating. He thought about what it meant that she'd arrived at that definition not from textbooks or lessons, but from watching the specific people in her specific life. "She's going to be something," he said. "She already is something," Dana said. "Yeah." He looked at her. "She is." They stayed at the restaurant until almost 9. They were not the couple that lingered awkwardly, filling silence with unnecessary conversation. They lingered the way people linger when they don't want the particular quality of a moment to end, which is a completely different thing. When they finally left and walked to the truck in the cool evening air, Dana took his hand without making it a moment. Just reached out and took it the way you take something that belongs to you, easy and certain. He held it. He drove her home, parked outside her building. They sat in the truck for a while the way you do when neither person is quite ready to say the practical word that ends the evening. "I talked to Janet today," he said. "Yeah. What did she say?" "She talked to Rebecca's attorney. Rebecca's attorney confirmed they're not pursuing unilateral relocation. They want to negotiate a modified schedule, more concentrated time in summer, spring break, some extended weekends. Fewer but longer visits." Dana was quiet listening. "It's not nothing," he said. "It changes things, but it's not the worst case." He looked at the building ahead of them. "I talked to Lily about it this afternoon. Before you ask, she took it better than I expected. She cried for a few minutes, and then she asked if she could FaceTime her mom more, and I said yes. And then she asked if her room at my place would stay exactly the same, and I said yes. And she said, okay." He exhaled. "She said okay." "Because she trusts you," Dana said. "She knows you're going to be there regardless of what the schedule says." "I hope so." "I know so." She turned slightly toward him. "Kids know. They absorb the truth of a situation even when the adults are trying to manage how it's presented. She knows her father is solid. That's not something you have to work to show her at this point. It's just something she knows." He nodded slowly. He thought about the first week, the burned grilled cheese, the missed permission slip, the parent-teacher conference written on his hand. He thought about all the ways he'd been running at a deficit without admitting it, and how far the last month had moved things. Not fixed everything. Not solved the structural difficulty of being a single parent with a demanding job and a 7-year-old who deserved more certainty than life consistently offered. But moved things in the right direction, at the right speed. "I want to tell you something," he said. "Okay." "I've been thinking about what you said. Last week in the kitchen. About 6 years ago, and the coffee and sitting with you for 2 hours. He looked at her. "I've been carrying it around all week, turning it over. And what I keep coming back to is I want to be that for you too. Not just you being that for me, not just you carrying things. I want it to go both ways. I want to be the person you call when it's a 7 on the scale." She was watching him steadily. "So I'm asking," he said, "not rhetorically. I'm actually asking, how are you right now? The real version." She was quiet for a moment, not stalling, considering. Dana always considered before she answered a real question. That was one of the things about her. "I'm good," she said. "I'm genuinely good, and I don't say that the way people say it when they mean something else. I got the administrator position." He stared at her. When? They called Thursday. I was going to tell you tonight. She smiled just slightly. I'm officially a person who works normal hours and will not come to your house in scrubs anymore. Well, less often in scrubs. Dana. He turned toward her properly. That's congratulations. That's a real thing. It's a big deal, she admitted. It scares me a little. Good things usually do. That's very wise. Did you make that up? I think Lily made it up indirectly. She laughed. The full version. He had spent 6 years cataloging that laugh without knowing he was cataloging it, and he was certain he would never get tired of it. I'm good, she said again, more quietly this time. I'm better than I've been in a while. The floor was... I was burning through myself on that floor, Marcus. I didn't realize how much until I started imagining what it would feel like not to be doing it. You made the right call. I think so. She looked at her hands for a second. I'm scared about us too. Not in the way that makes me want to stop. In the way that means it matters. I know. He reached over and put his hand over hers. I'm scared too. Same reason. She turned her hand over and held his. I keep thinking about what Lily said. About a good family just being people who keep showing up even when it's hard. She looked at him. We've been doing that. For 6 years, in the friendship version. We already know how to do the showing up part. The rest is just figuring out the shape of it. The shape of it? He repeated. The specific form. The official name for the thing. She tilted her head. We don't have to name it tonight. I know. He looked at her. But I'm not in a hurry to keep it nameless forever. Neither am I. He got out of the truck and walked her to the building door, because that was the thing he was doing now, the new thing that wasn't casual, but that they were both pretending was. She stopped at the door and turned around. The building light was behind her, and she looked at him in the particular way she had direct warm nothing held back. Saturday was good, she said. Saturday was really good. We should do it again. I was planning on it. She squeezed his hand once, let it go. Good night, Marcus. He waited until she was inside. Then he drove home. The end. Lily's 8th birthday arrived 6 weeks later on a Saturday in April that came in warm and golden and entirely committed to being a good day, the way April sometimes was when it was feeling generous. Marcus had asked Lily in February what she wanted to do for her birthday, a party with friends, something at the play center, a trip somewhere. Lily had thought about it for 2 whole days, which was unusual for her, and come back with an answer he hadn't expected. I just want us, she said. Us who and us. You and me and Dinah. She considered. And Mrs. Patterson if she wants to come. And maybe Emma. A pause. But mostly just us. He'd called Dana that night. She'd said without hesitation, tell me what to bring. So that was what they did. Dana arrived at 10 in the morning with a cake she'd made herself, not from a box. An actual cake, chocolate with purple frosting because Lily's favorite color was still purple. And Dana had remembered that since September and never made it a thing. She came through the door and Lily saw the cake and made a sound that was technically a word, but mostly just joy expressed at high volume. You made it, Lily said. You actually made it. I may have made 3 practice cakes this week, Dana said. The first one was a catastrophe. The second one was technically edible. The third one I gave to my neighbor. This is number 4. 4 cakes, Marcus said. Lily's first cake needed to be the right cake. Dana set it carefully on the counter. This is a non-negotiable standard. Lily stared at the cake with the reverence of someone who understood that something had been made specifically and entirely for her, and who felt the full weight of that. She looked up at Dana. Thank you, she said quietly, without any of her usual performance. Just the real thing. Dana crouched down to her level. Happy birthday, Bug. You called me Bug, Lily said. I did. That's what Daddy calls me. I know. Dana met her eyes. Is that okay?" Lily considered this with great seriousness for approximately 4 seconds. Then she wrapped both arms around Dana's neck, the full commit version of a hug. No hesitation, like her third foam pit dive. "It's okay," she said into Dana's shoulder. "It's really okay." Marcus stood in his kitchen and watched this, and felt something move through his chest that he did not try to name, because it was too large for a single word. He turned back to the counter, started cutting strawberries for the fruit bowl, gave himself a minute. Mrs. Patterson arrived at 11 with Emma in tow, Lily's friend Emma, whose mother had dropped her for the afternoon, and the house filled up with the specific energy of birthday morning, which was a frequency Marcus had always loved, the particular brightness of it. They played in the backyard. Dana got recruited into a game whose rules Marcus still could not follow, and which seemed to change every 3 minutes to accommodate whoever was losing. He grilled because it was April and warm, and because Lily had requested hot dogs, which remained in her estimation an acceptable birthday food alongside the chocolate cake. He stood at the grill and watched the 4 of them in the yard, Lily and Emma running some kind of circuit that involved the old swing set and a series of hand signals, Mrs. Patterson in the lawn chair with her crossword book, Dana standing near the fence talking to Mrs. Patterson and laughing at something, the afternoon light catching the side of her face. His backyard. The one he'd always meant to mow. He'd mowed it last week. He'd actually gotten out there and mowed it, which had felt like a small private victory. Not because a mowed lawn was significant in any cosmic sense, but because it was the kind of thing you only do when you have enough margin left over to care about the peripheral things. When you're running on pure deficit, the lawn waits. He had enough margin now. Not a lot. Not everything sorted and clean and figured out, but enough. Mrs. Patterson caught him looking and raised her crossword book in a small salute. He nodded back. She'd said something to him 2 weeks ago offhand while collecting her jacket after an evening. "She's good for you, that one. Both of you can tell." She hadn't elaborated, just zipped her jacket and left because Mrs. Patterson had a gift for delivering important information, and then immediately moving on as though she hadn't. She was right, though. Dana came over to this grill at some point, leaving Emma and Lily to their circuit, and stood next to him with her arms folded and watched the smoke. She didn't say anything for a minute. He didn't either. "She's going to sleep well tonight," Dana said finally. "She's going to crash halfway through the cake. I give her until presents. I give her until after presents. She'll want to open all of them." Dana tilted her head. "Fair. After presents, then." They stood there together, the grill between them and the yard in front of them, and the sound of Lily explaining a rule change to Emma at high volume. Marcus flipped the hot dogs. Dana watched Lily with an expression he'd only seen her wear for the last few weeks, a specific kind of open that wasn't there before, like a door she'd been holding almost closed and had finally decided to just leave open. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You're going to ask anyway." "True." He looked at her. "Are you happy?" She turned to look at him. The question had surprised her, not in an unwelcome way, in a way that meant she hadn't expected him to ask it this directly. "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one." She held his gaze. Then she looked back at the yard, at Lily and Emma and Mrs. Patterson and the warm April afternoon. "Yeah," she said, simply, no performance. "I am." "Good." He turned back to the grill. "Me too." She bumped his shoulder with hers. He bumped back. Neither of them moved apart. They did cake at 4 o'clock, because Lily had been monitoring the situation since 2, and the level of anticipation had reached a point where delay would have been genuinely irresponsible. Lily sat at the head of the table, Marcus's seat, which she'd claimed with the absolute authority of a birthday sovereign, and they sang to her slightly off-key, in the way of people who are doing it genuinely, rather than perfectly. And Lily sat there in the middle of it, with her chin in her hands and her elbows on the table, in a posture Marcus had corrected approximately 1,000 times, and was not going to correct right now, and she looked around at all of them with an expression he could only describe as full, complete, like a person who had everything they needed inside the specific circumference of this moment. She blew out 8 candles on one breath. Then she sat back and said with enormous satisfaction, "I got them all." "You did," Dana said. "I practiced." "When did you practice?" Marcus asked. "In the bathroom with the tap running so you couldn't hear," Lily said, and looked mildly triumphant. "I can hold my breath for 43 seconds. That's—" He stopped. "We're going to talk about practicing things in secret." "After cake," Lily said firmly. "After cake?" He agreed. Dana cut the cake. It was by unanimous verdict, including Mrs. Patterson and Emma, who were not obligated to be complimentary, genuinely excellent. Lily ate 2 pieces, and Emma ate 1.5, and Mrs. Patterson declared it the best birthday cake she'd had since 1987, and did not elaborate on that, and Marcus ate his piece standing at the counter because the table was full, and he didn't mind. He liked the view from the counter, the whole room visible, everything he needed in it. Dana caught him watching and raised an eyebrow. He shook his head. She turned back to the table, back to Lily, who was now explaining to Emma the detailed cosmological argument for why dragons could theoretically still exist in unexplored deep ocean trenches, and how no one had disproved it. Emma, to her credit, was listening seriously. Mrs. Patterson left at 5:30. Emma's mother came at 6. The house went from full to just the 3 of them, which had its own quality, not diminished, just different. Quieter. More like itself. Lily opened her presents at the kitchen table, which had been cleared of cake plates and restored to its usual purpose. She opened Marcus's first a book set he'd spent 3 weeks finding, the complete collection of a series she'd been asking for, 8 books in a box, with a purple ribbon, because purple, and she held it with both hands and said, "Oh," in a small, genuine voice that was better than any louder reaction could have been. She opened Dana's second. It was a small box. Inside was a compass, a real one, the old-fashioned kind, brass with a note in Dana's handwriting folded underneath. Lily picked up the note. She was not a fast reader yet. She was getting there. Her teacher said she was getting there, but she read it slowly and carefully, the way she read everything that mattered, her lips moving slightly. She looked up when she finished. "So you always know which way is home." She read aloud from the note in case anyone had missed it. Dana nodded. "So you always know?" Lily looked at the compass. She held it flat on her palm the way Dana had shown her, and watched the needle settle slow and certain, pointing north. She watched it for a long moment. "Dana," she said. "Yeah, Bug." "Are you going to be here like—" She searched for the right word with the focused precision of a child who understands that the right word is important. "Like for real, not just visiting." The kitchen was quiet. Dana leaned forward slightly toward Lily, her arms on the table, direct, honest, the way she was with everyone she actually loved. "I'm going to be here," she said, "not just visiting. Even when things are hard. Especially when things are hard. That's when I show up most." Lily held her gaze for a moment, checking it the way she checked everything, not skeptically, just thoroughly wanting to be sure the thing was actually what it presented itself as. Then she gave a small nod once, like a period at the end of a sentence. "Okay," she said. She looked back at the compass, watched the needle point north. Then she carefully folded Dana's note and put it back in the box, and put the compass on top of it, and closed the lid and held it with both hands like something she was keeping. Marcus looked at Dana across the table. She was already looking at him. Her eyes were slightly bright, not crying, just the outer edge of it, the place where things are felt before they're expressed. He knew that edge. He'd been living at it for weeks. He didn't say anything. She didn't either. They didn't need to. Lily fell asleep on the couch at 7:45, exactly as predicted, with the compass box on the cushion next to her, and the complete book collection stacked on the floor beside the couch, in order of how she planned to read them, which she had determined and announced before the first yawn hit. Marcus carried her upstairs. She was heavier than the last time, definitely heavier. Dana was going to say "I told you so," and he was going to let her. And she stirred just enough when he laid her down to turn on her side and exhale, and he tucked the blanket around her and stood at the edge of her bed in the dark. 8 years old. He thought about 7 years ago, the hospital. The weight of her in his arms for the first time, the specific terror and love of it, the way the world had reorganized itself around a 7-pound person without asking his permission. He thought about all the days between then and now, the ones he'd been present for, the ones he'd missed, the ones that would become the ones she remembered, and the ones that would disappear into the general blur of childhood. He thought about Rebecca, who was a good mother and was moving to Seattle and had given him Lily in the first place, and with whom he would be navigating logistics for the next decade because that was the shape of the thing, and it was survivable. He thought about Janet Merrill and documentation and modified schedules and all the practical architecture of a life being reorganized around what mattered most. He thought about Dana downstairs cleaning up without being asked, moving through his kitchen with the ease of someone who had finally fully decided that this was a place where she belonged. He pulled out his phone, not out of habit this time, with full attention. "My princess." He typed, "I love you. Sleep tight, princess. Dream of castles and dragons." 3 dots after sleep tight. Always. He sent it. Then he went back downstairs where Dana was folding a dish towel and looking at the compass box Lily had left on the counter for safekeeping, because she'd told Marcus very seriously my dresser isn't safe enough for important things. And Dana turned when she heard him on the stairs, and her expression was the real version, the whole thing, nothing held back. "She's out," he said. "She had a good day," Dana said. "The best one," he said, "in a long time." Dana set the dish towel down. She walked toward him, and he stayed where he was at the bottom of the stairs, and she stopped close, and he put both arms around her, the way you do when you're done being careful about it. And she held on, and they stood in the kitchen of that imperfect house on an April evening that smelled like chocolate cake and spring through the open window, and the compass on the counter pointed north the way it always would. This was what they'd built. Slowly, honestly, at exactly the right speed. A single father and his best friend and a child who understood things before adults were ready to hear them. A house that had learned to feel like enough. A life that was still complicated and hard around the edges and not finished being figured out, and that was also undeniably entirely the right one. They were not a perfect family. They were something better than that. They were the kind that kept showing up even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And that, as Lily Webb had correctly determined at 7 years and 50 weeks old, was the whole thing. That was always the whole thing.